overeating is like being given a liquid to put out the fire of overeating, but it just so happens that that liquid is gasoline. So it keeps making the fire worse. And if you're like me and all the women I've worked with, it's so frustrating, and you start to think, maybe there's something like really wrong with me, because I am trying really hard and I keep getting like more out of control with my eating. So if that's you, I'm about to show you a single trick you can do that will suppress your appetite by 300%. And it has nothing to do with food. It's a little change that you make in your pretty little head. Dr. Aaliyah Crum from Yale did a study that I think you're going to find very illuminating. She divided people up into groups, and in one group, she gave them a really high indulgent calorie milkshake. It was 620 calories. It was very decadent and indulgent. The other group, she gave them a diet shake, basically. It was a sensible shake of 140 calories. For each participant, they studied their ghrelin, their hunger hormone. This is the hormone that's responsible for 3 really important things if you're wanting to lose weight. It has to do with whether your appetite is really high or low, whether your metabolism is high or low, and whether your body is holding on to fat for dear life or shifts into the fat-burning state. So kind of an important chemical. They took blood tests before, during, and after the shake. And as they would expect, ghrelin is the hunger hormone. When the person consumed the 600 calorie shake, their ghrelin plummeted 3 times lower. So like 300% drop. So that shifted them into an appetite suppressant mode, sped up their metabolism, and shifted them over into fat burning when they had the higher calorie shake. When they had the diet shake, the 100 calorie shake, their ghrelin stayed steady. So it didn't go down. Even though they consumed some calories, their hunger didn't decrease, the metabolism didn't go up, they didn't shift into the fat burning state. Well, here's the rub. Every single person in the study got the same exact shake. It was 340 calorie shake that everybody got. The only difference is what they were told they were given, what they believed they consumed. This is big. The people who were drinking the 300 calorie shake and thought they were having this indulgent, chocolatey goodness caused their hunger hormone, their metabolic profile, to shift into slim mode. The person who thought that they were eating the diet shake kept their metabolic profile as if they were really hungry and wanting to seek out the food. So why do we care? This is really important because it was one of the pivotal studies that really showed within weight loss how important the way that we perceive and frame what we're eating is, and the direct impact it actually has on our metabolism. I kind of alluded to it before, but just to be really specific about it, when ghrelin gets high, it becomes an appetite stimulant. It's orexigenic. What it does is it really sets us up for another big word, which is hyperphagia. But this word is really important for dieters because it is defined as the extreme unsatisfied drive to consume food. Let me say that again. The extreme unsatisfied drive to consume food. That's kind of like home base for any of us who have dieted for any amount of time. It's like, yeah, that's just Wednesday. So when ghrelin is high, this is what it triggers. It also slows your metabolism down. It decreases your energy expenditure, and it shifts your body out of the fat burning state. It says, hold on to that fat, which those sound really, really mean, right? When you're wanting to lose weight, you're like, that's not really nice. But your body isn't against you. Think about it. This is actually super adaptive and life-saving if we weren't like diluted and on a wacky diet. Because if you think about it, in the wild, your brain doesn't know that the person that's creating the famine is you. Your brain just knows we used to be having this much food and now we're only having this much. That's a famine. If you were in a famine, it would be very adaptive to drive your urge to eat through the roof, because the neurotransmitters that it hits on, this part of the brain, the nucleus accumbens, when they've severed that part so that the wanting molecules don't get to activate, rats will die in their cage. They will put the food in their mouth, they'll really enjoy it, but if the food is like one rat's body's length distance away from themselves, they will not take any action to go get it. So it makes sense that if we were in a famine, it's really adaptive and sweet that without, flashcards needing to remember or anything, or a Post-it note or an alarm on your phone, your body automatically skyrockets through the roof your urgent urge to seek out food. Second, if you were in a famine, slowing your metabolism, it makes you a fuel efficient vehicle. So one hamburger that you're going to find out in the wild, right? One hamburger, if your metabolism starts slowing down, can last you like a day. Whereas if you had a really fast metabolism and it was sped up, you might burn through that burger in a couple hours, and then your chances of dying would be higher, right? Also, the shift away from fat burning to holding on to fat is amazing if we are in an actual famine, because fat is your offline storage that your body will then use to have some snacks later. It doesn't know how long this thing's gonna last, right? So it's not your body being mean and being against you, and it's not what I think has been the popular lore that lowering your calories is what causes the slow in metabolism. It is the belief that we are in a famine, the belief that we are eating as little as possible. I have Bridget, she said I could share the story, from my Thin Happy Sane lab. She's in the group. I taught her this, and she wrote me within a week and was like, I've lost 5 pounds and I have been plateaued for so long, because what she had always done, I would always jokingly call her eating plan the eat as little as possible diet. She would let herself eat whatever she wanted, but she kept clamping down and being like, I just need to eat as little as possible. And what this was doing is she was constantly having 100 calorie shakes in her head, even if it was a 5,000 calorie meal. In her head, it was eat as little as possible. So she kept triggering her ghrelin to hold on to fat, slow her metabolism down, and be hungry all the time. And so once we went through this and I taught her how to shift into a more abundant space with food, she was so excited. It was like, I lost 5 pounds and I have been, she's like, I'm sure some of it was water, but in a week, but still she'd been stalled out. The opposite side, when people were told that they were having the 640 calorie shake, and again, they were still having 300 calories, when they believed it was really indulgent, their ghrelin just plummet and it went down. So these are the traits of low ghrelin. When it goes down, it's an appetite suppressant. It tells your brain, we don't need to seek out food. You could spend all your energy on something else. It also speeds up your metabolism. It's like, okay, if there's lots of food, we could be efficient, just burn through it, use it really efficiently. And it allows your body to go into that fat burning mode. And the studies show that when we keep it down, it's associated with the long-term fat loss, right? Because it's like, we're good. To summarize, independent of what you're eating, the deprivation mindset is fattening. It's kind of the shorthand of saying that. A deprivation mindset triggers metabolic changes that are more fat saving, and an indulgent mindset, independent of what you're eating, triggers a metabolic profile within yourself that is more slimming. So this explains why when you're, quote, being good on your diet and you're eating the equivalent from a deprivation standpoint of that 100 calorie shake, that explains why you have that out of control hunger, that hyperphagia, that unrelenting, unsatisfied urge to eat that we all are so familiar with the moment we start dieting. And it's really sad because, the nutritionists and the people who create the diets don't understand that this is a psychological phenomenon that gets triggered from the mindset of deprivation. Has nothing to do with the actual calorie content, which the study proves, but they set us up to be triggering that out of control hunger. And then we turn around. This is why we all of us who dieted for a long time end up thinking that we're disordered, because we have this crazy, insatiable, urgent, obsessive, out of control urge to eat. And we're like, okay, that was scary. Did you just see what I just did back there with that pan of brownies? I'm a little freaked out. And so we kind of buy into that narrative explaining that we're disordered, when in reality, the system we're using is disordered, and it is triggering reliable, predictable, and measurable hardwired responses from our brain. When we have the input, if you put deprivation into the blender, you're going to get gasping out. And again, it's not to be mean, it's your sweet, sweet body's way of taking care of you. This also explains why, and this is a really sad part about this, is that we all know what it's really like when you diet. You start saying, I'm gonna be really good and I'm just gonna have a few mini carrots, and then they don't really do the trick, and you're like, well, maybe I'll have some caramel cakes, etc. And then, that's the gateway drug to like 20 minutes later, you're like standing up, eating lasagna, and, downing a pan of brownies. And it's that crazy hunger where it doesn't even feel like you're the one choosing the food. It legitimately feels like the food is choosing you. And it's like what I shared in my book, How to Have Your Cake and Your Skinny Jeans Too, where one time when I was a dieter, I ate 3/4 of a pumpkin pie. And never once at any point during that eating process did I ever have more than a shaved, see-through, paper-thin, standing up, 1 foot into eating slice, right? We all know that drill where it's like, I'm not really gonna have any, but you just go have a little thin slice. So that deprivation mindset triggered my hunger, slowed my metabolism, and it also, had that obsessive where I would keep going back, and I realized, holy moly, I have eaten 3/4 of this pie and I had no satisfaction. I still had this out of control hunger, which didn't make sense. Like, there was no way. Whereas think about cutting off the 3/4 of that, just placing it in front of you with a fork, maybe some whipped cream, and like having at it. That would be such an indulgent mindset that it would be so easy to get really full and, again, because my ghrelin would drop. So that's also where in dieting that we can end up doing that gateway eating where we eat a ton. But even though we ate so many calories, we were never really committed to it. And our mindset was that, I'm still trying to eat as little as possible, sneaking mindset. Ugh, I get so nervous in my stomach even remembering that feeling. It's such a nerve-wracking feeling. So if a deprivation mindset is fattening and makes your hunger go crazy, and you need to create a calorie deficit in order to lose weight, because that's just basic math, then what the heck do you do? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's one of my favorite things to teach. In my Thin, Happy, Sane program, I've spent 20 years studying the human brain and working with women to teach them really basically the 3 skills that we need to do to start working with our brain instead of against it, because your body wants to be thin more than you do. It operates the best. It is designed to be relatively lean. And so we get into the situation where we're constantly battling ourselves, and it totally feels like my body just wants to be this way, or the real me is out of control with food. As you can see, that was not the real you that was doing that crazy gasping for food. It was because we were using that limiting dieting mindset. So there's basically 3 steps that we need to do in order to be permanently thin, working with our body. And the first one is that we need to uncross our overeating wires. Dieting has crossed some wires and kicked some backfiring systems. The one that we talked about in today's research is a great example where trying to eat less metabolically impacts you that you want to eat more, independent of whether you are actually eating less. And that's what's so important about this study, is that we've all been taught, like, oh, it's just, because my metabolism gets slower when I eat less. This proves, because everybody was given the same caloric shake, and it was believing that you were depriving, thinking that you were in a famine, that caused your metabolism, or the ghrelin response, to be more the fattening, slow metabolism, boosted hunger side. So for the big picture, in order to be permanently thin, there's 3 things that we need to do. The first step is to uncross those wires, where you learn the slimming skills that replace dieting, that undo that backlash response, both motivationally and metabolically. So we get to extinguish that gasping response. That feels like heaven. As someone who binged so much when she was younger and felt so out of control, learning how to overwrite that where it doesn't fire in my brain anymore because I'm not pouring gasoline on it, that's lovely, and I love sharing that. The second step after we uncross the food wires is to fire your mean food boss. Dieting has us using control instead of attuned alignment. with our motivational system and our body. And I mean, as every teenager knows, for every very controlling food monitor, there's a teenager climbing out a window somewhere. So that's our gasping self. The more we restrict, we climb out the window into the, bucket of ice cream. And the third step is eating for enjoyment. That ties into what we're talking about today. Dieting has you eating for a deficit, a deprivation eating, and the true skills to stay permanently thin without struggle, without willpower, is to eat for enjoyment. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It really is as simple as switching from a deprivation mindset to an enjoyment mindset when you approach food. But one thing that really differentiates my program from dieting and intuitive eating, because dieting results in binging and clamping and on plan, off plan, but the sort of intuitive eating school, you stop the binging, you stop the controlling, which is lovely, but they also say things like you have to be comfortable gaining weight and it's like you have to let go of your desire to slim. But they kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, like, okay, you're not restricting, but you're not making progress. So I wanted it all. Within my program, we have a single goal that you make enjoyable progress because we want that sense of mastery. It doesn't feel good when the food chooses you. You want that sense of empowerment and mastery where you're the one choosing the food. So in the diet days, we created the calorie deficit by going from eating a lot of food to eating a little bit of food. And as we've seen, that triggers the deprivation, keeps your ghrelin high, keeps you hungry all the time, slows down your metabolism. No bueno, we don't want that one. Instead of focusing on the amount of food, we shift our focus altogether on the true focus that our primal animal brain really likes, which is pleasure and pain. Your animal brain will always be on your side if you are going away from pain and toward pleasure. See, the problem with that deprivation mindset is like, yeah, I want to be thin, but I don't know. I also really like cupcakes. And if you're telling me that I have to always choose, I'm going to need to be going toward pain because it's painful to have to say no to a cupcake when I'm hungry and I really, really want one. So the enjoyment mindset shifts the focus off should and shouldn't and morality of good or bad and gets it over to your animal brain's primal language, which is pleasure and pain. Think about your eating in a normal week. Think of like a pie chart. What percentage of that eating would you say is pure, amazing, satisfying enjoyment, where you're focused on that bite that's in your mouth and it's like, it's exactly what you wanted and it's so satisfying? Fill that in. What percentage of your normal week is really painful eating? When we diet, we have two flavors of painful eating. We have the should eating, where you're like, oh great, everyone's having pizza and I'm having this like piece of celery with like one leveled tablespoon of almond butter in it. And then there's also the shouldn't eating, which we tend to trick our brain and think, oh, it feels so good, just say, forget it and eat all that food. But actually, I'll never forget, like one time I was in one of those crazy eating moments. I was like eating Doritos and I just froze. And I noticed like my shoulders were really hunched. I wasn't in any way focused on the chip that was in my mouth. I was focused on that next bite and then the candy bars that I had waiting on deck for me next. And I realized, wow, this moment is really painful. It promised that if I said yes to eating, that like, all my worries were gonna go away and it was gonna feel really relaxing. But I was really agitated and stressed. It also kind of promised that if I ate it, it would kind of scratch the itch and the desire would go away. But I was still wanting to keep on going. The shouldn't eating, when we really, really focus on it, think about it, it's really painful too. So in our dieting or normal eating, when we think about this huge amount, this like mechanical munching, we're checked out, we're not paying attention, we have one foot in, it's really painful. I always call it like that mechanical munching. It's really nervous. Think about that pie chart. Now we want to come over to the enjoyment eating, where we want to increase that little sliver of enjoyment to the majority of your eating is really enjoyable. So we would contrast, shoving hot French fries that are like so hot you can't really even chew them while you're driving, pulling right out of the drive-thru, eating them in a nervous way because you're kind of not really wanting to admit to yourself you're eating them. Or sitting with a plate of French fries and like looking for the one that has the most salt with a great dipping sauce and, you know, a great beverage with it, and just really enjoying that. And then you get to satisfaction and you're able to stop. And then everything that's left over, you're just not wanting to eat because you're not wanting to do the painful eating. That becomes your deficit. So with the diet deprivation eating, we have a teensy little bit of enjoyable eating, a lot of painful eating, high hunger, and it's more calories, more pain, and it triggers the fattening hormone profile. Whereas with the enjoyment eating profile, we have tons more enjoyment. If we look at that before and after, teensy bit of enjoyment, now you will have a ton of enjoyment. No pain, lots of pain before, no pain now. Your animal brain loves a good before and after. And we end up with fewer calories, way more pleasure, less pain, and we cleverly trigger the slimming hormone profile. I mean, that's enjoyable eating. What's not to love about this? So I invite you to go ahead and play with that. Play with asking yourself the question instead of how can I cheat the system and eat the most with the fewest calories, to ask yourself, what would bring me the most pure enjoyment? And approach your food that way. If you found this at all helpful and you would like to pay it forward and have it get through the algorithm to another woman who's like hurting with food, I would love to ask you to put a thumbs up, maybe leave a nice comment, because those actually will help give feedback that this was helpful, and I'll send it to more women. And if any of this resonates with you and you'd actually like to dive deeper and you hurt with food, I'd love for you to come and check out our Thin Happy Sane monthly membership, where you get to meet with me twice a week live, and I help you learn these skills. There's 15 modules and hundreds of hours of live coaching calls that you can listen to, and workshops. And it's a really supportive, amazing group of women who are learning the skills to, without struggle and without dieting, finally get permanently thin without struggle. So check out the link below. And until we speak again, take great care.